Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is April 23rd, 2023, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine, shall we? First things first, I just want to apologize because I am still a little bit sick and I'm trying to recover, so I haven't been as consistent as I wished I had been, but rest assured, as I get back in full health, I will try to make more videos. So it's been a week since I've made my update and there has been some changes on the front lines. So let's start with Bakhmut. Obviously things are again not looking good for the Ukrainian army, and the Ukrainian forces are holding about 10 to 15% of the city itself at this point, if not less. The Russians are getting closer and closer to grabbing and controlling the entirety of the city. And honestly, at this point, I think it's inevitable that the Ukrainian forces will have to pull out. I really hope it's not going to happen. I've been repeating myself multiple times about this, but you know, every week it seems like they're getting closer and closer. So the Russians really want Bakhmut, so it's great because, as I've said, it's a black hole. It's been sucking out all the resources and all the manpower, and the Russians are really wasted their time on Bakhmut. It's just for them at this point a very symbolic victory, but it's not going to last for long. As we've seen, they're panicking because they know that the Ukrainian counteroffensive is going to happen. Now, what is interesting is that the Institute of Study of War yesterday pulled out a report saying that the Ukrainian forces have established positions in the east left bank of the Dnipro River in Kherson, meaning that they're now somewhat controlling certain parts of the left bank. Now, it's not established or known how much they control, but it's kind of interesting to see that the Ukrainian forces have crossed the river and can actually cross the river safely and have control over certain areas of the left bank. And I'll get into detail on the map update in a few seconds. Additionally, the other hottest front is the Avdiivka Donetsk front, where the Russians continue to attack, but they have limited gains there. And so some people are saying that, you know, the counteroffensive has already started, the Ukraine's already advancing. I personally don't think so, but we're at the prelude at this point. And as you can see, I think I've pulled out just a weather report of Gulyai Pole in Zaporizhia, so about the middle of Zaporizhia, a city that's located in the middle of Zaporizhia. And you can see that we're still not quite there yet in terms of favorable conditions for the Ukrainians to move and, you know, without any worries of getting stuck in the mud with the thaw. You can see that there's still a lot of rain that's coming up, and the weather is still, you know, about less than 20 degrees at best, so it's still not favorable enough for the Ukrainians to pull off this, you know, counteroffensive right now. And I think that early May, mid-May, we're going to start seeing a lot of movement. Now let's go to the map so I can show you guys what is going on with Bakhmut. And since we last spoke, I last made my video on April 16th, you can see that the Russians got a lot of ground within the city. So April 16th, this is what it looked like. So basically where the railway line was, that's where the fighting was ongoing, you can see here. But the Russians got some ground in the south. Sorry, I was going backwards. So you can see that they got some ground in the south here as we advanced towards the 22nd, and also in the north. So there's a lot of fighting right now in the north. The Russians desperately want to grab Hromove. You can see that they have some fire control over one of the roads that leads into Bakhmut through Hromove, and then there's the last TO504 highway that goes to Ivanivske, which is still under Ukrainian control, but overall the situation is difficult, and you can see it's about 10 to 5% at best that the Ukrainians are controlling at this point in terms of the city of Bakhmut. So it's not easy, and I sometimes downplay the fact that yes, the Russian soldiers mostly are poorly equipped, inexperienced, they're not elite at all, but there still are some elite units within the Russian army, including the Wagner PMC, where they're well equipped, they have great attachments, they know what they're doing, and it's complicating things for the Ukrainian army that is currently not really getting that many resources to do a small counteroffensives to push out the Russians within Bakhmut. It's just not going to happen at this point. All the resources are directed at the counteroffensive that is going to happen in Zaporizhia and even through Kherson, as I've indicated with the report, the latest assessment of the Institute of War, that the Ukrainian army took positions close to Oleshke, so just on the east side of Kherson. Now, it's not known exactly where the Ukrainian forces have set up base, but this is great because this could mean that the Ukrainian army could be pushing during their counteroffensive, not only to from Zaporizhia, but also from Kherson. So it's kind of a squeeze movement where the Russian forces just won't be able to, if the Ukrainians, when the Ukrainians, I should say, are going to start pushing in Zaporizhia, they won't be able to allocate their forces that are currently in Kherson to continue defending in Zaporizhia. So they don't have a choice but to continue having a presence here. So it's definitely diminishing the amount of forces they can commit to defending Zaporizhia. And Zaporizhia is very heavily defended at this point. There's a lot of maps indicating that they have a lot of trenches. As you can see here, the amount of forces that they've committed here is quite large. So it's not going to be an easy fight for the Ukrainians, but it's a smart move to kind of squeeze. And obviously from Kherson, you're much closer to Crimea and disturbing their supply lines here that go through Jankoy towards Melitopol. So overall, it's going to be interesting to see what is going to happen in the next few weeks. I'm expecting this major movement to start happening around early to mid-May. And the last thing is, I can also confirm that I think it's a prelude, because the last week I started seeing a lot of videos of the Ukrainians moving and really kind of amalgamating a lot of the promised vehicles. So now they're getting the Leopard 2s, and I've seen them in Ukraine, the Striker, APCs, what else? There was also the AMX RC-10s that were provided from France. So a lot of the weapons that were, pledged in early January, now Ukraine is getting them, and now they're kind of grouping them together. So overall, I think that in the next few weeks, we're going to start seeing a lot of real movements and a lot of real attacks from the Ukrainian army. In Zaporizhia, for sure. In Kherson, it's a question mark, and hopefully somewhere around the Donbass area where they can also maintain pressure against the Russian forces. And the Russians at this point are definitely scared, because they realize that they need to be on the defensive. They can no longer continue this pace in their offensive, and the only pace that they can continue with this offensive is in Bakhmut. So that's it for the map. Now let's get back to the slides, and I have another big statement, big significant news, and that is that Russia is going to cancel the Second World War remembrance marches over fears that Ukraine, well, obviously the looming counteroffensive, but also that the people might not be so happy and might start protesting against the regime. So here it says that the Kremlin has canceled nationwide Second World War remembrance marches over fears that they would have turned into protests over Ukraine war casualties. It also said, by canceling Immortal Regiment parades next month, the Kremlin has undermined its own propaganda that Russian soldiers are once again fighting Nazis in Ukraine. The Russian state is struggling to maintain consistency in the core narrative that it uses to justify the war in Ukraine. So overall, what I want to say about that is the May 9 parade has been canceled on in the Red Square. That's already huge. That's never been seen before. It would have been unthinkable last year to do such a thing. And it has never been skipped before. Let me repeat that. The victory parade and, even the immortal marches have been kind of a central thing within Russian society, especially, right? It would have been unthinkable to cancel that. And at this point, canceling them it's a huge deal for the Russian people. And to me, that proves yet again that the Russian regime is afraid and cannot reliably also defend its borders, right? It's not only that they're afraid of people perhaps protesting against Putin's you know, and his army and the lack of success and victory in Ukraine, but it's also the fact that they can't even count on their own, you know, defense to really reliably defend themselves, right? Because now they're afraid of what if, you know, a Ukrainian drone strike is going to happen somewhere on the Red Square during the parade, and that's just going to blow everything, you know, against the regime, right? Like, so I think that they're slowly losing control, and that proves yet again that Ukraine is really picking up the momentum right now, and I think that Ukraine needs to pick up on this momentum to really make this this government collapse as quickly as possible. Additionally, I saw a really cool documentary, and I think his channel is Good and Bad Times, where the person discusses the potentiality of Russia's collapse and how that would play out. So I really recommend you because it's a 3-part series, and there's a lot of interesting scenarios. Again, it's a scenario. It's not like it's going to happen 100%, but I think that this could be a potential scenario that could play out once Russia starts collapsing. And this, what we're seeing here with them canceling May 9 parades, canceling, you know, groupings of people getting together, is really the beginning of the end for the Russian regime, in my opinion. So the last thing is I want to finish my videos now with positive posts, and so with my very first positive post of the day, this is a very feel-good story. So this man is Fuminori Tsushiko, and he's 75 years old. He's from Japan, and he moved to Ukraine not too long ago, a few months ago, and so he hid for 8 months from the shelling in the Kharkiv subway, and now he decided to open up a cafe called Fumi Cafe, and there he serves free lunches, free hot lunches, and coffee and tea, and he sold his house in Japan to, you know, be able to afford to open this cafe, and he continues to volunteer in Kharkiv. So to me, that's so brilliant. And you can see here that he's wearing a vyshyvanka. It's a custom, you know, Ukrainian t-shirt, or not a t-shirt, but it's a shirt that you can wear that's called vyshyvanka. So, you know, it's really feel-good story. Kudos to him to really, you know, sacrifice himself, right? He sold his house, he sold, you know, whatever he had back in Japan to come and help the Ukrainian people. So for me, I really pay my respect to Mr. Tsushiko. So that's it, guys. Please let me know what you think about this Ukrainian movement in Kherson. I think that's really interesting, and how that's going to play out. I'm very curious what you guys think about it. If you enjoy my channel, please subscribe to it. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next video very soon. Thank you. Take care.